The night before their audition felt heavier than any night Miguel and Liana had ever lived through. Outside their budget hotel room, New York's restless streets crackled with life, car horns, laughter, distant music, but inside, the world was strangely quiet. It was the kind of quiet that arrives before a life-changing moment, the kind that settles in the air and presses gently against the heart. Miguel sat at the edge of the bed, holding his battered microphone. The silver paint had chipped off long ago, a reminder of every street performance they had done back home in Manila. His fingers traced the cracks as if touching the years of sacrifice stored inside them. He had always been the steady one, calm, patient, the older brother who believed that dreams took time. But tonight, even he could feel time breathing down his neck. Across the dimly lit room, Liana stood near the small window. The glow from the city reflected softly on her face, revealing the nervous tremble in her shoulders. She clutched the charm bracelet their mother had given her, tiny stars hanging from a simple chain, each one representing a wish she once made as a child. Liana had always been the gentle soul, emotional yet resilient, the kind of girl whose voice could calm storms. But tonight, the storm lived inside her. Their entire journey played silently in the room. The late-night rehearsals. The days they couldn't afford proper meals. The moments they almost gave up. Music had saved them more than once. It had carried them through the emptiness left by struggle. It had wrapped their hearts in warmth when life felt too cold. Their harmony wasn't just sound, it was survival, written in two voices that had grown up learning how to breathe together. Tomorrow, they would step onto the biggest stage of their lives. Tomorrow, millions would hear the song that carried their family's hopes. But for now, in this small room filled with fear, hope, and memories, they sat quietly, two siblings holding on to the dream that had carried them across oceans. Tomorrow wasn't just an audition. It was a chance to rewrite everything they had ever known. Morning arrived quietly, slipping through the thin curtains like a soft whisper. Miguel and Liana didn't speak much as they prepared. Their movements were slow, careful, almost sacred, like they didn't want to disturb the fragile hope resting between them. Every heartbeat felt louder than the traffic outside. Every breath felt heavier than the suitcase they carried. By the time they reached the AGT venue, the building towered above them like a monument made of dreams. Posters of past winners lined the walls, faces of people who once stood exactly where they now stood, hopeful, terrified, determined. The air smelled of backstage makeup, warm lights, and something else, possibility. Miguel checked in at the registration desk, his hands steady even though his heartbeat wasn't. Liana walked beside him, clutching her bracelet so tightly her knuckles turned pale. She tried to smile, but her lips trembled with the weight of everything they had prayed for. The backstage hallway stretched endlessly, each step echoing softly against the polished floor. Around them, other performers whispered their lines, tuned their instruments, stretched nervously. Dreams from all over the world gathered here, breathing the same anxious air. Miguel kept glancing at Liana, noticing how her eyes darted to every little detail. The cameras. The stage lights bleeding through a distant curtain. The giant LED screen flashing the AGT logo. She wasn't afraid of the stage, she was afraid of failing their family, their journey, their years of sacrifice. A staff member waved them forward. Miguel inhaled deeply, shoulders lifting as if carrying every memory from home. Liana walked beside him, her steps small but determined, as she traced her fingers over the bracelet, counting wishes to calm her shaking heart. Then they saw it. The stage. Golden lights. A sea of seats stretching endlessly. The judges' table glowing beneath the spotlight. Simon, Heidi, Howie, and Sophia sat waiting, silent, unreadable, larger than life. The world felt impossibly big, yet strangely quiet. For a moment, the siblings simply stood there, breathing in the enormity of it all. Their dream was no longer a dream. It had shape, sound, color, light. It was real. They stepped forward, not because they were ready, but because their story deserved to be heard. The moment the stage light settled on Miguel and Liana, a quiet stillness washed over the entire auditorium. It was the kind of silence that felt almost alive, a breath held by thousands of people at once, waiting, wondering, trying to understand who these two young siblings from the Philippines were, and what story lived inside their voices. Miguel stood slightly ahead, his microphone resting gently in his hand. The light caught the edge of his jaw, highlighting the strength he had carried all these years. Beside him, Liana's eyes softened as she cast one last glance at the audience, a sea of faces blurred into a glowing field of anticipation. She wasn't just standing under a spotlight, she was standing under every moment that had ever tried to break her. The music began softly, a single chord rising through the speakers like a fragile heartbeat. Miguel nodded once, a silent signal, a promise that no matter what happened next, they would face it together. Then it came. The first note. Miguel's voice slipped into the air with a tenderness that felt almost unreal, warm, deep, carrying the weight of nights spent singing under dim lights and mornings spent chasing a dream that always felt just out of reach. His voice didn't just fill the room, it filled the empty spaces in people's hearts. Liana followed a heartbeat later. Her voice lifted gently, her tone delicate yet powerful, weaving itself around Miguel's like a soft ribbon of light. Together, their harmony rose into the auditorium, creating something too honest to ignore and too beautiful to describe. People leaned forward subconsciously. Hands paused mid-clap. Breath stopped mid-sigh. Their voices moved like a story, rising with hope, falling with hurt, meeting again with unbreakable love. It wasn't trained perfection, it was lived experience. Their harmony carried memories of shared hunger, shared joy, shared pain. It carried the truth of two siblings who refused to let life silence them. Even the judges sat differently now. Howie leaned closer. Heidi's eyes softened. Sophia held her breath. And Simon, known for his stern stillness, watched them with a rare, unguarded heart. With every note, the room grew smaller, tighter, more intimate, as if every soul inside was being pulled gently toward a single moment that would stay with them forever. This wasn't just a performance. It was a miracle unfolding in real time. By the middle of the song, something unexplainable had taken over the room. The air felt thicker, warmer, almost sacred, as if every heart inside the auditorium had synced itself to the rhythm of two young voices standing bravely in a golden circle of light. Miguel lifted his voice first, letting it climb higher, richer, fuller. There was a strength in his tone that didn't come from vocal training but from years of carrying responsibilities far heavier than his age. Every rise in his melody felt like a silent confession of battles fought quietly. Then came Liana, her voice soft at first, almost trembling, until it melted into Miguel's tone like sunlight merging with dawn. Their harmony expanded, filling the entire auditorium, sweeping through the aisles like a wave of warmth. People felt it. Deeply. Instinctively. A grandmother in the fourth row lifted her hand to her mouth, tears slipping down her cheeks as if something tender inside her had just been touched. A teenager who had spent the whole evening scrolling on his phone slowly lowered it, eyes wide, heart open. A woman who came alone reached for the hand of a stranger beside her, and that stranger didn't pull away. Miguel's voice soared, stretching into a note that carried every hardship they had survived. Liana followed, her harmony rising behind his like a fragile wing protecting his strength. Together, they created a sound that felt too pure for a world so full of noise. On the judges' panel, everything shifted. Heidi leaned forward, her eyes glassy. Sophia's hand rested gently on her chest. Howie shook his head slowly, not in disbelief, but in awe. And Simon, he simply stared. Still, silent, undone. The kind of stillness that only appears when something truly rare is unfolding. Then came the final moment. The last note. Long. Fragile. Unbroken. The siblings held it with everything they had left, every breath, every memory, every ounce of hope woven into their voices. And when it finally faded, the silence that followed felt like the heartbeat of the world pausing. Then it happened. The room exploded. People stood. People screamed. People cried openly, unashamed. It wasn't applause anymore, it was gratitude. It was release. It was love. Miguel and Liana hadn't just impressed the audience. They had healed something inside them. Two siblings from the Philippines had turned a talent show stage into a moment the world would never forget. Backstage, the world felt different. Softer. Brighter. As Miguel and Liana stepped off the stage, their legs trembled beneath them, not from exhaustion, but from the overwhelming wave of emotions still crashing inside their chests. Crew members stared at them with wide eyes, their expressions somewhere between disbelief and pure admiration. Miguel exhaled shakily, running a hand over his face as if trying to wake himself from a dream. Liana clutched his arm, still feeling the echoes of the final note vibrating through her bones. They had no idea what was happening outside the walls around them, no idea that the moment they stepped off stage, something extraordinary had already begun. A producer rushed past them, phone in hand, eyes glued to the screen. Another staff member whispered, "It's blowing up already," as she hurried to her station. Slowly, the siblings began noticing the glow of screens everywhere, people scrolling, replaying, sharing, reacting. Their performance clip had been posted only minutes earlier. Yet the numbers were moving like waves in a storm. 100,000 views. Then 2 million. Then 5. The video spread across continents like light breaking through darkness. From Manila to New York, from London to Dubai, families watched together, strangers shared it, children replayed the harmonies as if trying to understand the magic they had felt. Comments flooded in faster than anyone could refresh. "This healed me today. I don't know them, but I'm proud of them. I cried from the first note. Thank you for reminding the world what hope sounds like." For once, the internet wasn't arguing or fighting, it was united, wrapped in the warmth of a moment created by two siblings who had come from so little. As the night deepened, news outlets began calling it the performance of the season. Music bloggers wrote about their story. Reaction channels filmed emotional responses. Even celebrities shared the clip with simple captions like, "Wow." Miguel and Liana finally sat together on a quiet backstage bench, unaware of their growing global impact. They weren't thinking about fame or headlines. They weren't thinking about going viral. They were thinking about home. About their mother. About how proud she would be. In that small, fragile moment, the world outside was roaring, but they were still, soaking in the quiet truth. Two voices. One dream. And a performance that didn't just move people. It paused the entire internet and reminded millions what it means to feel alive. Morning rose gently over the crowded streets of Manila, spreading a pale gold light across rooftops patched with rust and hope. In a small, narrow room at the edge of Quiapo, two siblings prepared for another day that looked painfully similar to the one before it. Yet deep inside, they carried a dream far bigger than the streets they walked on. Aiden, at 20, moved quietly, almost invisible in his own home. He had a softness in his nature, a gentleness that life had not managed to erase. Mira, just 17, was the opposite, a spark, brave and steady, holding her family together with silent strength that felt older than her age. Together, they were a balance. One heart beating softly, the other burning bright. Their father rested on a worn mattress near the window. His illness had weakened him, shaping his shoulders inward, but his eyes held stories of better days. Their mother had already left for her morning shift, the weight of survival pushing her through exhaustion. Everything felt heavy, yet the siblings carried it without complaint. Music was their only escape, the single place where poverty could not reach them. Outside, the city buzzed with life. Jeepneys rumbled past. Vendors called out. And beneath an old awning near the marketplace, the siblings set up the small speaker borrowed from a neighbor. This had been their stage for years. No bright lights. No cameras. Just passing strangers who sometimes stopped, sometimes ignored, sometimes smiled. When they sang, their voices blended like two colors merging into one. Aiden's quiet, aching tone wrapped itself around Myra's bright, fearless sound. People paused, sensing something rare. Something honest. Something born not from training, but from surviving. Yet even as they sang, worry clung to them. Bills piled up. Medicine was running out. Their mother grew thinner. Their father grew weaker. And every night, when the singing ended, silence reminded them of their reality. Then, one late evening, Mira opened an email that made her breath stop. An invitation. An audition. A chance so unreal it felt like a dream too fragile to touch. And for the first time in a long time, hope walked into their small room. Their decision to leave was not made in a single moment. It grew slowly, like a quiet courage awakening inside them. The AGT invitation felt impossible at first, too far, too expensive, too far from everything they knew. But their mother's tired smile and their father's trembling hand told them what they needed to understand. Sometimes life opens only one door, and all you can do is walk through it. The siblings gathered what little they had. Aiden packed his old guitar, the same one he had repaired with tape and hope more times than he could count. Mira folded her best dress, simple but clean, one she had saved for special nights that never came. Neighbors slipped coins into their hands. A tricycle driver they knew offered a small donation. Even strangers who often listened to them sing whispered blessings. Manila lifted them gently, as if the entire city wanted to see them fly. When they reached the airport, their hands trembled. They had never been inside a terminal before. The bright floors, the long hallways, the unfamiliar announcements, everything felt larger than life. As they stepped onto the plane, their hearts beat faster, caught between fear and a courage they did not know they possessed. High above the clouds, Aiden stared out the window. For the first time, the world seemed bigger than the struggles waiting at home. Mira looked ahead, eyes full of silent faith. She believed that even if they failed, they would return knowing they had tried. Los Angeles greeted them with bright billboards, tall buildings, and a sky that felt wider than anything they had ever seen. The air was different. The noise was unfamiliar. Yet they carried every scent and memory of Manila with them, its warmth, its chaos, its heart. Inside the AGT waiting area, dozens of performers practiced. Some with glittering outfits. Some with world-class confidence. Some with teams supporting them. The siblings had none of that. Only a guitar. Only their voices. Only each other. For a moment, doubt wrapped itself around Aiden's heartbeat. But Mira placed her hand gently over his. They didn't come to compete. They came to honor every sacrifice made behind them. And somewhere deep inside, they knew this journey had already changed them. The backstage area hummed with nervous energy. Performers tightened laces, adjusted costumes, whispered final thoughts to themselves. But Aiden and Mira stood quietly in a corner, holding their guitar between them like a lifeline. The stage felt impossibly close, just a curtain away, yet still far enough to make their hearts tremble. Aiden's hands felt cold, the kind of cold that came from years of self-doubt. Mira closed her eyes for a moment, letting the distant echo of the audience settle inside her chest. They could hear cheers, applause, the shifting waves of anticipation from thousands of strangers waiting on the other side. It was overwhelming, but also beautiful. When their names were called, they stepped forward with slow, steady breaths. The world felt brighter as the curtain parted, revealing a stage washed in golden light. Above them, massive screens, towering rigs, and cameras pointed directly at their faces. The judges watched with curious, unreadable expressions. The crowd murmured, waiting to be impressed, waiting to be moved, waiting to feel something. The siblings walked toward the center, small figures in a space designed for legends. For a brief second, Aiden's knees weakened. Mira instinctively shifted closer, grounding him with silent strength. Together, they stood beneath the spotlight, their first real spotlight, and the atmosphere shifted, delicate and electric at the same time. When the music began, the air seemed to still. Aiden closed his eyes, allowing the first gentle note to rise from his chest. It floated softly, fragile yet full of truth, like a story whispered on a rooftop. Mira followed, her voice weaving around his, bright and pure, lifting the melody higher with every breath. Their harmony grew, filling the theater with the soul of Manila itself, its resilience, its heartbreak, its hidden beauty. The audience leaned forward, captivated by something they didn't expect. This wasn't spectacle. This wasn't performance. This was two young souls pouring every hardship, every night of uncertainty, every small moment of hope into a single song. When the final note echoed through the silent hall, something extraordinary happened. A hush, deep and absolute, settled over the crowd. And then, as if moved by one heartbeat, the entire audience rose together. A standing ovation so powerful it felt like the world itself was applauding. And in that breathtaking moment, their lives changed forever. Backstage, time seemed to slow as the final echoes of applause faded behind the thick curtains. The siblings stepped off the stage with trembling legs, their breaths uneven, their hearts still racing from what had just unfolded. The world outside had erupted into something they had never imagined, thousands rising together, cheering not for a spectacle, but for their truth. For a moment, neither of them moved. The adrenaline held them still, as though the air itself was too heavy to breathe. Crew members paused in their routines, watching the siblings with a rare softness. Some leaned forward with wide eyes, others exchanged glances that silently acknowledged they had witnessed something unforgettable. It wasn't just a performance. It was a moment, raw, human, and deeply real. One producer pressed a hand against their mouth, visibly moved. A lighting technician wiped their eyes quickly, pretending it was dust. Even the stagehands, usually busy and unbothered, stood frozen, quietly absorbing what they had seen. It was as if the entire backstage area had been touched by a wave of emotion that refused to pass. The siblings walked slowly toward the hallway, still trying to process the magnitude of what had happened. Aiden's steps were uneven, the weight of all the years of doubt suddenly lifting from him. Mira steadied him with a gentle touch, though her own hands trembled with a mixture of relief, disbelief, and overwhelming gratitude. Inside, a shift had begun, something subtle yet powerful. For the first time, Aiden saw himself through the eyes of those who had just witnessed his voice. Not as the shy boy on the streets of Manila, but as someone capable of filling an entire theater with silence and awe. Mira, too, felt a change. Her courage, once carried quietly in her chest, now shone openly, reflected in the stunned faces around her. As the siblings sat in a small corner backstage, reality slowly settled in. They had come to America carrying only a guitar, a dream, and the weight of home. But now, something new rested on their shoulders, hope from strangers, belief from thousands, and a truth they could no longer deny. The world had seen them. And the world was not going to forget. When they finally returned to Manila, the sky looked different, brighter somehow, as if the city itself had been waiting for them. The warmth of home wrapped around them the moment they stepped out of the airport, greeting them with the familiar scent of street food, the distant calls of vendors, and the hum of jeepneys weaving through traffic. But something inside the siblings had changed. They walked the same streets, yet the world now felt wider, filled with possibilities they once believed were too distant to reach. Neighbors came out of their homes, faces glowing with pride. Some had watched the performance live, others had seen the clips spreading across social media like wildfire. In small shops and narrow alleyways, people whispered about the Filipino duo who made an entire crowd stand at once. Their voices, once carried only by the market wind, now traveled across oceans, touching hearts far beyond the city that raised them. At home, their father's eyes sparkled with a joy that illness had long stolen from him. Their mother held them close, tears slipping silently down her cheeks. The family had always shared burdens, now they shared something else, triumph, light, and a dream reborn. As days passed, the world's reaction grew louder. Messages poured in from strangers who felt healed by their music. People spoke about courage, resilience, and how two siblings from Manila reminded them that beauty can rise from the hardest places. Interviews, invitations, and opportunities followed, but the siblings remained grounded, returning often to the same corner where they once performed for coins. Not for money, but for gratitude. For the people who believed in them before anyone else knew their names. Their AGT performance became more than a viral moment. It became a symbol, proof that greatness is not reserved for the privileged. It can come from narrow streets, from small rooftops, from places where dreams are often overshadowed by survival. Aiden and Mira continued singing, but now with a purpose larger than themselves. They carried the voices of those who worked without rest, those who loved without condition, those who hoped quietly in the dark. And as they sang, the world listened. Their legacy was simple, yet profound. A reminder that when truth is sung with heart, it has the power to lift not just one crowd, but the entire world.